So,
Right.
okay, define state for us.
Okay. So when I think of state, and I've done some homework, right, as the good network engineer I am, what does the IEEE say about state? What does the IETF say about state? Has anyone else ever defined state accurately? And I did find a paper called The Framework for Network State Management and Next Generation Internet Architecture from December 2008, excuse me. And their definition is to treat state like virtual memory, for just how to treat state, not to define it. And it has a three-dimensional framework: a space dimension, an addressing mapping, and an access mechanism.
Oh,
Like,
you
it's
just lost
very,
everybody. You better
I've
explain
lost
this.
everybody. This is very technical paper. So I thought to myself, what's a more practical definition of state? When was I introduced to state? And for me, it was actually on a Cisco PIX firewall, which I cut my teeth on.
Oh, Pix, a brother from another mother. Oh man,
Yeah.
I had a cat named Pix just because of that
Oh,
firewall. If you
really?
can
That's
believe that. Oh
incredible.
yeah.
So I still remember, right? The guy who taught me PIX, high to low is right, or low to high you must deny, and high to low is good to go, something like
Something
that.
like that. Yeah.
So it had a stateful firewall capability, meaning it could track something leaving the firewall, track the state of that return connection, and automatically let it through, which seems like nothing today, but at the time that was a dramatic breakthrough for internet connectivity and enterprise firewalling. So there's that kind of state. There's representational state APIs, REST, and I think REST is the best definition of state if we can think about it. And this world has opened up to us. We'll talk about that a bit later, but the restful state of, versus say SOAP or XML, we're talking about JSON and restful representation of your state. So the counters or errors or the configuration.
JSON, basically a key value pair. You've got a key and some number that's associated with it. So that key value pair is a representation of state. When I was queried, this is the key and this is the value associated with it. State.
Exactly. There's also, like in the Cisco compute, right, on supervisors, we've got the stateful switchover, SSO, and we've got nonstop forwarding, and NFS. And then
that
even
is where
like
the state of the forwarding table is maintained during like a switchover from one soup to another. You don't have to rebuild your forwarding tables from scratch. You have that state mirrored in that stateful switchover process.
Right, which is I have 4 supervisors, right? I never expect to lose a packet if I lose any of those 4, or if I lose one half of my shelf. That's my expectation of that state, that they're going to be.
That, yeah.
I expect that, right? And the worst thing I see, the major upgrade that doesn't allow in-service upgrades, and I actually have to bring down a full shelf that disrupts state. Right? No, it doesn't just, I can't just upgrade one soup and then it fails over to the other soup, and right. So it depends on your of the type of upgrade there, right? But the state is kind of well defined for us, right? So I think of the configurations, and it's the sum of its parts, right? The whole represents the sum of all of these parts down to every interface that's configured, the global config of every switch and router, right? How they're all interconnected. We have the OSI model that we can overlay on top of this idea of state, so we can conceptualize. Okay, at layer 1, do I have CRC errors? At layer 1,
I want to differentiate something though, John.
Yeah.
I think you can have a configuration which is an intent that does not necessarily reflect state. Like going back to your source of truth comment earlier on. What is truth? Well, truth is what the state is what's actually happening on the network. So for example, you could intend to have an OSPF neighbor adjacency come up, but if the other side is not also configured for that OSPF adjacency to come up, you may intend it. That may be in your config, but that's not what actually happened. That's not your state if the other side was not configured for that OSPF adjacency to come up. You'll have one side configured, one side not. Your state is no OSPF adjacency between the two.
I completely agree that you have to differentiate between that configuration, the full configuration management, the sum of all these parts, and it's almost like that the Windows thing, right? The resultant set of policies. It's the resultant set of configurations, right? The RSOC, I guess, gives us this state. Now, is it a healthy state? Is it our intended state, I think even those are different things. I can have a fully healthy, no alarms, no syslogs, no SNMP traps, completely humming along network that doesn't really reflect what I want it to do though. Oh, but this traffic from this secure zone is actually able to get out to the internet. I don't intend that. I don't want that. That's not what I want to happen, but that's what's happening, and it's happy to do it. These network devices, right? Like, it's almost like the code and the programming. They'll do what you tell them to do, and they're happy to do the wrong thing all the time for years and years. It will happily forward that unsecured traffic out to the internet against your intent and your will. So start with the managing of the configurations, right? So to me, that means data models, modeling data, and that's going to be a YAML file and a collection of YAML files. And then
so we back up. We got to set some context here. So if managing config is important to this, yes, because that helps us establish intent.
Right.
That is, we need to know what we mean for the network to be doing so that we've got something to measure that state against. Measuring the state, as you say, it could be humming along, but if the intent is for it to have a secure zone that can't get to the internet and it can get to the internet, well, that sucks. So how do you take the config and abstract it in such a way that we can programmatically analyze it and determine that the state of the network is matching the intent of the network as defined by the config, which takes us to, now you're talking about YAML files and stuff. So, okay.
So I think, again, I just want to connect that dot to, first, maybe some people don't know how to establish their intent or a source of truth, right? So I don't want to go too fast into missing the dots between how do I do a configuration management, John, right? Like, you're talking about intent-based config management so that I can have an intended state that I can measure and test and validate against. I think you have to break it down into infrastructure as code. So your data models, right, are going to contain key pair values and lists. They're not very complicated. In fact, they shouldn't be complicated. They should be human readable.
It shouldn't be. So just for people that are scared right now, because you just said key value pairs and mentioned YAML a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
Think of this as a different way to represent a show run. If you are used to typing in CLI commands and building configuration stanzas, what are some other ways that you could represent that data that you're typing in with those commands? Well, you could have a database like key value pair store that basically has all of the same things. So that's what we're really talking about here. Don't freak out if you're freaking out.